Was war between the northern and southern states inevitable? What were the political, social, cultural, and economical events that led up to and occurred during the war? How did the war permanently affect the United States politically, socially, economically, and culturally? The first industrial revolution is the Industrial Revolution that had a transition to new manufacturing processes in the period from about 1760 to sometime between 1820 and 1840. The first industrial revolution had many impacts during the 19th century. Things such as the Lowell system, immigration, changing technologies, and transportation innovations. The Lowell system was a labor and production model employed in the United States, particularly in New England during the early years of the American textile industry in the early 19th century. Immigration is the action of coming to live permanently in a foreign country. Some technology they had was the telegraph, which was invented by Samuel F. B. Some transportation innovations they had were the railroads and canals. Other impacts included a decrease in employment, which made human life in cities worse. In the North, they had no slaves and were considered Federalists. In the South, they owned slaves and were considered anti-Federalists. There are many social reform movements of the 19th century. An example is the Second Great Awakening. It was religious revivals among Protestants. There were new religious groups formed as instruments of reform, along with many women's rights. The abolition movement was the movement to abolish slavery. William Lloyd Garrison wanted to free the slaves and wrote a newspaper about it. Also, Frederick Douglass, an escaped slave, believed that slavery could end without violence.
There are many similarities and differences between the North and South, culturally, socially, politically, and economically. In the North, there was small farming, labor provided by family members, factories began hiring in New England, factories requiring workers, industry, better transportation, and low-pay factories. In the South, they had a plantation economy, cash crops, cotton plantations, yeoman farmers, lower population, less trained railways, and little amount of resources during the Civil War. There are many technological aspects of the Civil War. It has been said that some call the Civil War the first modern war. This was because of how much technology was developed during that time, things such as knives and swords. There were also many social aspects of the Civil War. Men were taken from their farms, factories, and plantations. They were sent to fight, leaving women and children to tend to the home themselves. In the North, the factories were left with few workers. In the South, their population slowly but surely decreased. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. He saved the Union during the American Civil War and emancipated the slaves. Lincoln was seeking and negotiating peace. He had the power to get the 13th Amendment ratified. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He was very persuasive and stood up for what he believed in and took charge whenever he felt the need to. Overall, Lincoln was clothed in immense power. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in the Constitution of the United States addressed the issues of slavery and guaranteed equal protection under the law for all citizens. The 13th Amendment banned slavery in the United States and any of its territories. The 14th Amendment grants citizenship to all persons born in the United States and guarantees them equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment ensured all citizens the right to vote, regardless of race or color, previous conditions of servitude. Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction was basically a desire to build a strong Republican Party in the South, also to end the bitterness from the war. Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's former vice president, plan was more severe than Lincoln's because it deprived all former military and civil offers of the Confederacy. The war ended in 1877, but before that there were many political, social, economical, and cultural changes in the South. Some things that occurred during the Reconstruction were the 14th Amendment being passed, the Reconstruction Act of 1867, the 15th Amendment being ratified in 1870, and former slaves moving to cities and starting schools and churches. At the end of the war, there were many economical costs. Some included the Union War, which was $2.3 million, the Confederate War, which was $1 billion. The Union inflation peaked at 182%, and the Confederate inflation peaked at 7,000%. The Civil War brought death to Americans than did any other war. The war cost untold billions and nourished rather than canceled hatreds and intolerance, which persisted for decades.